The individual calcite crystals are packed tightly together. The shell is only 17 1/1000ths of an inch thick. When pressure is applied to the outside, the shell works like the arch in a bridge that carries the load to each side. And like the stones in a structural arch, the greater the pressure on the crystals, the tighter they get. The shell is strong enough to support the mother duck. It can also support 24 aunts, uncles, and cousins, more than 50 pounds of ducks. The shell can withstand pressure from the outside, but a duckling pushing from the inside doesn't pack the crystals together, it forces them apart and the shell breaks. The eggshell works. It's a shape that protects its tenant and then yields when it's time for the duckling to emerge. Architects and engineers have discovered the strength and efficiency of these rounded shapes. They have been making domes for thousands of years and are still building variations on the basic theme illustrated by the egg. A very small surface area for a given volume. A light structure with a rigid shell. As water flows over this fall, it carries some air with it into the stream below. The air rises to the surface as bubbles, and when they are packed tightly together, they make a froth, an integrated system of rounded polygons forming partitions. Seen in 2 dimensions like this, the partitions join 3 at a time. Here's one 3-way joint. Here's another. Here's another. They enclose a 6-sided figure. It's hexagonal, as are most of the bubbles on the surface of this froth. It's shaped like an ice crystal, but it doesn't come from freezing. It comes from the physical pressure of bubbles crowding together. Single bubbles made like this start as hemispheres. When the 2 of them touch, they form a common wall. A 3rd one makes a shared 3-way partition. Resting on the surface of the water like this, there will never be more than 3 around a single joint. Each bubble keeps its original amount of air, but partitions are shared, so less surface area is needed to enclose the same amount of air. Efficient systems of partitions are used to advantage by living things, too. Wasps and bees build nests with hexagonal cells. Less material means less work, less investment of energy per cell, and more cells in which to lay eggs. The network of veins in this leaf uses 3-way joints, meaning relatively short distances for the fluid to travel. And this common freshwater algae is a web of individual cells joined 3 at a time. The hull of a rowing scull barely disturbs the calm surface of the water. But the turbulence caused by the oars makes another basic shape. When an oar pushes against the water, it makes a spiral whirlpool, a column of water spinning faster in the center than the outside. It's the difference in the speed of growth which shapes this ram's horn, but in this case it grows faster on the outside of the curve and is forced into a spiral. The shell of this ordinary pond snail grows in a spiral, as does the shell of the chambered nautilus. It belongs to a group of mollusks that have inhabited tropical oceans for hundreds of millions of years. The chambered nautilus moves by jet propulsion like its distant relatives, the octopus and the squid. The shell of the nautilus is a spiral of mathematical precision. The process of growth that generates this form is elegantly recorded in its interior structure. It may live for 20 years, though it's not certain how often it makes chambers. Each one is about 6% larger than the one before it, but they are all the same shape. As the nautilus grows, it creates chambers by secreting calcium carbonate, which gradually accumulates. The nautilus is the mold for its own shell. As the animal grows, its shell grows with it. Spirals are also a common pattern of growth in plants. It's found in the way both leaves and flowers grow. Each division in the face of this sunflower is a single, very small blossom called a floret, and they pack together in an orderly array. They create a pattern of rows spiraling out from the center. While the bud is still closed, almost microscopic florets grow out of the center one after the other. Although it appears as if the newer florets are added to the outer edge, in fact they originate in the middle. As new ones grow in, they force the older ones to the outside. The florets all grow at the same rate, and as they grow, the spiral pattern grows with them. It might seem that the florets grow along a spiral track, but each one is forced out from the center in a straight line as the head of the flower gets bigger. The reason that the pattern is preserved is that though the florets are of different sizes, they all grow at the same rate. If they were growing at different speeds, the pattern would be distorted. All composite flowers, whether they are sunflowers or daisies or their relatives, have heads that are made of separate florets. The florets on the outside are older. Like the chambers of the nautilus, all the florets are the same shape, but of different sizes. The order of their growth makes the spiral pattern, just as the tight wrapping of a young fern and the increasing size of the leaves on this succulent plant are ways of growth that make spirals. The oars of the rowing scull make another shape that is closely related to the two-dimensional flat spiral seen on the surface of the water. The part of the whirlpool that reaches down into the water is a helix. The vortex is a three-dimensional structure that twists like the rows of scales on this pine cone. A pea vine climbs by wrapping itself around a pole, and in the process makes a helix. When the vine reaches out with its tendril and encounters a support, it encircles it, then modifies the winding motion to make helical coils, pulling itself closer to the pole.